All right. Very good. Take out your Bibles and turn, if you would, to Exodus. Exodus chapter 25. We're going off series here, but not really. We're just giving a little bit of back study. Last week, we finished up 2 Samuel chapter 5. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, David defeats the Philistines in the battle of the valley of Rephaim. And next week, if you read ahead, and I would encourage you to, look at 2 Samuel chapter 6. And this records when David brings the Ark of the Covenant from where it was up to Jerusalem. And it's a little bit involved, and tonight I'm not going to steal all of my thunder for next week, but we're going to take a look in depth next week at 2 Samuel chapter 6. But because we're going to be talking about the Ark of the Covenant, we're going to take just a little bit of time here this evening, and we're going to talk about the origin of the Ark of the Covenant, and then we're going to trace its journey throughout the Old Testament. We're going to look at it where it starts, and we'll trace it until it disappears. We'll start off here in Exodus with the manufacturing of the Ark. Following the Exodus from Egypt and the crossing of the Red Sea, the Israelites came, they encamped there at the foot of Sinai, and it was there at Sinai that they were to receive the law of God. The Ten Commandments are found in Exodus 20, so this is after the Ten Commandments when we read about what we're going to. In Exodus 25, God is speaking to Moses. Remember that God spoke to Moses face to face, the way a man talks to a friend. Moses got to spend many days in the presence of God as God would speak to him and share with him the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Beginning in Exodus 25, verse 10, and going forward, God describes a special box that he wants built. This box is to be made of the wood of the shittim tree, which is the word that we would use for it now is the acacia tree. Now, when we were over in Israel, I took this picture when we were in Gedi, which is where David hid from Saul in the cave. This is the acacia tree. Now, that tree at its base, maybe like that, maybe a little bit bigger, but it's not big, not what you would think, well, I'm going to get a lot of boards out of this to build something with. So either it was a different variation that had a little bit wider trunk, which is possible, or they just took a lot of trees and they cut them and shaped them down into this box. It's made out of this acacia wood. The biblical measurements are found in cubits. Now remember, a cubit is the length from the average man's elbow to his fingertip. We would typically give that as 18 inches. But kind of an interesting fact for you from history, when it was in Rome, when they were measuring by cubits, it went by the emperor's cubit. Well, there was an emperor named Augustus Maximus, and he was like 7 foot something. So suddenly their cubits all have to get remeasured because his cubit was a whole lot bigger than the last guy's cubit. But the average is 18 inches from a man's elbow to a man's fingertip. It translates out in feet to 3 3/4 feet long, 2.5 feet wide, and 2.5 feet tall are the dimensions of this box. It was made of wood, and then that wood was overlaid with gold. And that would be a long process and a very involved process, but something that they were accustomed to doing in that day. They overlaid the box within and without with gold. On the 4 corners, they mounted rings. And then they had staves that were also gold-plated, that they would run through those rings, and that was how the ark was to be carried. It was to be carried by the Levites, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Now, the lid of this box, the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, was the most special part of the ark. It would be called the mercy seat, which we just sang about, the mercy seat. This box is wood and then gold-plated. The lid, to the best of our knowledge, solid gold, made out of a slab of gold that fits to the top of the box. It has 2 cherubim. Now, I have in front of you, this is a artist's rendition, and you have seen similar, and you've seen very different ones. And the fact of the matter is, nobody knows exactly what it looks like. So, an artist's rendition here, it has two cherubim on each side. Those two cherubim have their face inward. The mercy seat is right in the middle of the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. These two cherubim, they have their wings are extended up over their head and out in front of them so that they will touch right over the center of the mercy seat. Exodus 25:22. Here's why it's special. You can look at it. It says, "And there I will meet with thee." This is talking about the mercy seat. "And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel." So, you remember, talk back to me a little bit here, while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, before they began the 40 years of wandering, God led them in a physical way. Do you remember this? In the daytime, He led them in a pillar of cloud, and at nighttime, He led them in a pillar of fire. Okay, so why would He do that? Well, because at night, the fire is easy to see, and in the day, the cloud's easy to see. So, there are many who believe, and I would agree with them, that it's entirely likely that the fire came down right on the mercy seat. It would make sense because that was indicating the presence of God. So you have the Shekinah glory of God, which is there at the mercy seat, and then you have the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire. Again, that is where it ended is not in Scripture, but it does kind of make sense. But what we do know is that this place, according to Exodus 25:22, was where God chose to manifest in visible form His presence. Now, God is a spirit, so it's not a body, but it's light, fire, and in some cases, the physical presence of God is manifested in this place. The Ark of the Covenant was the only piece of furniture that was in the Holy of Holies. If you remember, the tabernacle in the days of Moses and then on up until the time of Solomon, the tabernacle is a big tent that has two rooms. In the first room, as you go in, there's the altar of incense, there's the table of showbread, there's a golden candlestick, there's some things in the first room called the holy place, and that's where the priests would do their business on a regular daily basis. But at the back of the tabernacle, you have a veil hanging down. And it is the veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. The only article of furniture within the Holy of Holies is the Ark of the Covenant. There are no candlesticks, there's no table, there are certainly no chairs. There were no chairs in the whole of the tabernacle. This is it. It was at the mercy seat that we read in Leviticus 16 that once a year, on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go underneath the curtain bearing in his hands the blood of a bull, and he would apply it to the mercy seat. The Day of Atonement, atoning meaning to cover, that was the day when the high priest would go in and make an atonement for the sins of the nation of Israel. Okay? All of that centers on the mercy seat. The mercy seat being the center of the lid of the Ark of the Covenant. Now, what was in the Ark of the Covenant? Well, we find in Exodus 25:21, it has in it the two tables of stone. Now, these would be the tables of stone that Moses carved out, and then God wrote on them. What happened to the set of tablets that God carved out and wrote on them? Yeah, Moses threw them down when he came down off of Mount Sinai and saw the children of Israel worshiping a golden calf. So God said, this time I want you to carve out the tablets, and then God wrote on them. So those were in the Ark of the Covenant. Hebrews 9:4 gives us some information. It says that also in the Ark of the Covenant was Aaron's rod that budded and a golden pot of manna. This golden pot of manna was to be there so that the children of Israel, in time to come, would say, hey, what was manna? Well, there's some in the Ark of the Covenant. They would be able to have it as a reference. The ark was to be carried by the Levites. That matters especially to what we're going to see next week. Specifically, not just the Levites, also the sons of Aaron. And not just the sons of Aaron, but the sons of Kohath. So, very specific instructions given. It's only to be carried by the staves that run through it, and only to be carried by the Levitical sons of Kohath. That's it. That's God's defined way that He wants it to be carried. So that's the origin of the ark. Let's look at the journey of the ark. You can turn. I'm going to put some of these verses up on the screen for you. Others, we're just going to go. They're very familiar passages. The ark left Sinai, and the children of Israel carried it around with them as they approached the land of Canaan, and then as they went on their 40 years of wandering. During this time, if it was not on the shoulders of the sons of Kohath, it was in the tabernacle. You didn't just leave the Ark of the Covenant sitting out there. It was the most sacred object to the Jewish faith. So they're kind of particular about it. If it's not on the shoulders of the sons of Kohath, it's in the actual tabernacle itself. When it came time for the Israelites to enter the promised land under Joshua, Moses has passed on. They come and they have to cross the Jordan River. Now this is the Jordan River that we saw when we were there. This looks an awful lot like a muddy ditch, doesn't it? You know who agrees with you in that assumption? Naaman. You remember when he was told to go and dip 7 times to be rid of his leprosy? He said, "Are not the Abana and the Parfar," which are rivers in Assyria, "aren't they better? I can do this anywhere." But it was specifically the Jordan. The Jordan looks like this a good bit of the year. And we think of it kind of as this, it's a ditch, essentially, runs down between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. When it came time for the Israelites to enter the promised land under Joshua, they had to cross, and it wasn't so much a ditch. The Bible specifically tells us in Joshua that the river was at flood stage. So it's a big, muddy river that's running down. While we were over in Israel here recently, we were able to Jordan is fed not only by the Sea of Galilee, but by 3 tributaries. Here's one of the tributaries. Hit it one more time, dear, and it'll start up. This is one of the tributaries. Now, you see that's kind of moving a little bit. This is one of 3 that funnel in. What happens to fast-moving water as it goes into a smaller channel? It moves faster, right? That's just kind of the way it goes with physics. So that's what how it looked when we read in Joshua 3:13, "And it came to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand up upon a heap." So here's how it works. They come up, you got these 4 guys, sons of Kohath, holding the Ark of the Covenant, and they walk up to not a ditch, but a raging river at flood stage. And God says, "I want you to just step in." What do you think? It seems kind of risky, doesn't it? Especially when you're holding the most sacred object, right? But the only people who got their feet wet that day were the priests who stepped in the Jordan. Because as soon as they stepped in, it's not like the Red Sea parted, where the Red Sea parted and they walked through and they had water on both sides. This is a river. When they walk through, the water stops and it starts to pile up. The Bible tells us it piled up as far as Edom, which is a long way in the opposite direction. The rest of the water just runs off that way. And so the children of Israel walk across, and the priests stood there with the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulder as the rest of the children of Israel crossed over. And then when all was done, and there was a little bit more, we won't go into it for sake of time, they walked out, and guess what happened to the river? Went right back to its flood stage, and it starts sweeping down again. Just by way of thinking about it, do you figure that made an impact on the people who lived in the land? How about the people who live downstream? You kind of get used to the river. And then all of a sudden, you see the last of it go past you. And there's nothing more coming. And then you hear of a massive lake that's forming up to the north of you. And then all of a sudden, all of the water that backed up for the days it would have taken the children of Israel to cross comes roaring down the river. It would have been rearranging the topography a little bit. They get across the Jordan, and the first city they come to is Jericho. And God had a particular way He wanted them to conquer Jericho. He wanted them to march around it once a day for 6 days. On the seventh day, march around it 7 times, and then blow the trumpet, shout, and He'll knock the walls down. Anybody remember who was bringing up the rear in the line of people who were walking around Jericho? The sons of Kohath carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was used in this battle, if you want to call it a battle. After all is said and done there, the children of Israel come to the end of the conquest of Canaan. Joshua 18 verse 1 says, "And the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh, and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there, and the land was subdued before them." So, the tabernacle and the ark come to Shiloh. Here's where Shiloh is. It's right in the middle of the map. You see Shechem, just down from that, Shiloh. So, kind of centrally located for the children of Israel, for them to be able to get to, because this is where the tabernacle was erected. Shiloh is where Hannah took Samuel to be in the service of the high priest Eli and his 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. In 1 Samuel 4, the evil sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they took the Ark of the Covenant into battle with them at the Battle of Aphek. You remember this? We talked about it a little bit when we were going through. They were losing the battle. They thought, hey, what we need is a good luck charm. Let's take the Ark. So they went in. Were they supposed to do this? Oh, not even close. But they take the Ark of the Covenant and they take it into battle. Well, it didn't serve as a good luck charm. Instead, the Israelites lost the battle, and the Ark of the Covenant was, for the first time since its creation, it fell into the hands of pagans. It fell into the hands of the Philistines. The Philistines took it as a kind of a war trophy. They were going to prove, hey, look, our God is better than the God of the Hebrews because we won. So they took, in 1 Samuel 5, they took their trophy and they put it in the temple of Dagon. And you remember what happened. In the temple of Dagon, their great big statue of Dagon kept falling down on its face in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Why? I think because God has a sense of humor. God kept knocking their statue down. Could you imagine having to go in and pick your God up? But they did it twice, and one time they had to put his head back on. Okay? It's just embarrassing, but it's proving a point. So they took it out of the temple of Dagon, and they passed the Ark of the Covenant around. It keeps going from city to city. What happened in every city it went to? Everything happened in the cities it went to. The men developed tumors. They had blights of mice. There was disease. It was a terrible thing. And it just so happened to follow the Ark of the Covenant around. So finally, the Philistines said, enough. We're getting rid of this box. We don't know what it is, but it's not worth keeping. So they put it on a cart. Now keep that in the back of your mind, okay? They put it on a cart, and they let it go from Gath toward Bethshemesh. Now, they let loose these cows. They took 2 nursing cows, took away their calves from them, which by nature the cows would go back to nurse their young, but they didn't in this case. They marched in a straight way, and that field right there that you see a little bit out, that's the field where the Ark of the Covenant stopped. That's Bethshemesh. If you look straight off that way to the farthest mountains you can see, over those mountains in an absolute straight line is where the Philistines let the cows loose. And they went in the quickest possible way to Israelite territory. Well, the men of Bethshemesh, they're Jews, so they should have known better. But they thought, wow, look at that. That's the ark. Let's see what's inside of it. So they opened it. And God killed 50,000 of them. 50,000 plus. Well, the ark didn't make its way all the way back to Shiloh. In 1 Samuel 7, the ark was brought to the home of Abinadab in Kiriath-Jearim, where it stayed for 20 years. This would be the end of Saul's reign and all of that. In 1 Samuel 14, Saul commanded the ark to be brought to Gibeah, but it's unknown whether that command was ever followed because he was attacked immediately after he gave the command, so we don't know. Now we're going to go into a lot greater detail on this next week, so I'm not going to steal my thunder. But in 2 Samuel 6, David begins to bring the Ark of the Covenant from the house of Abinadab in Kiriath-Jearim up to Jerusalem. And it's going to take some time for him to get it there, because he's going to try it the wrong way first before he does it the right way. And it will stay in the care of Obed-Edom the Gittite for 3 months. Following that 3 months, David brings the ark to Jerusalem. It's placed in a special tent. And it wasn't until 1 Kings 8 that the Ark of the Covenant came to its final home in the Temple of Solomon, in the massively beautiful and extremely lavish temple that Solomon built. This is the only article of furniture that was not made bigger and better by Solomon. Everything else, the new altar of incense, the new candlestick, the new table, he made everything bigger with the exception of the Ark of the Covenant. It was the original from the time of Moses. So the original Ark is placed behind the veil in the Holy of Holies. 1 Kings 8:9 tells us, and there was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone, which Moses put there at Horeb when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. Which begs the question, what happened to Aaron's rod that budded and the pot of manna? I'd love to know, wouldn't you? But we don't. Apparently it was lost somewhere along the way. In the shuffle, as it was being moved around, we don't know exactly what happened, but they were lost. Now it's sitting in Solomon's temple. It has within it the 2 tables written with the hand of God, and that's all. And then the ark went missing. In 586, the Babylonians came and conquered Judah. They sacked the city of Jerusalem and they destroyed Solomon's temple. They razed it to the ground. They took everything out of it. Jeremiah 52 records what they took. I would encourage you, go and read it. In Jeremiah 52, verses 16 to 23, Jeremiah lists everything that they took. And I would read it to you, but it's a long list. He lists in there that they took the pillars, and they took the capitals, and the chapiters, and the basins, and the spoons, and the candlesticks, and the snuffers. But guess what he doesn't say that they took? The ark. Now, you would think in a list that is including everything, now I know this is an argument from silence, but you would think in a list where he's talking about the fact that they robbed the candlestick snuffers, that if they had taken the Ark of the Covenant, it would have made the list, but it doesn't. Some scholars believe that they think that the Babylonians did take it. They think that Nebuchadnezzar took the Ark of the Covenant back with him to Babylon, and there it was destroyed, very likely melted down and turned into other implements. Others believe, and I would be among them, believe that the priests at the time of captivity, or perhaps Jeremiah himself, hid the Ark of the Covenant and that it's been preserved. Now, if you're into conspiracy theories, you can find a lot when it comes to the Ark of the Covenant. There are many who wonder where it is, and there are lots of books written about it. There are TV specials that have been done about it. I'll boil it down to this. It's not common knowledge where the Ark of the Covenant is. Some believe that Israel has it, and that Israel knows where it is. There are some who believe that it's in a monastery in Ethiopia. There are some who believe that it's in England. There are some who believe it's in the United States. Okay? There are people who have all different positions when it comes to this. An interesting fact, though, that we don't think of often, in Herod's temple, in the temple that Jesus worshipped in, because there was no Ark of the Covenant, what was in the Holy of Holies? Nothing. So on the day that Jesus died on the cross and the veil was torn from the top to the bottom, whoever was in the holy place looked and saw an empty room, because there was no Ark of the Covenant. It had been taken. It had disappeared from where we knew it was. Which brings us to the future temple and the present blessing. There's going to be 2 more temples. There's going to be another temple that the Jews are going to build. It will be the tribulation temple. It's interesting. I thought I'll show you some pictures of it if you'd like to see. When we were there, they have assembled the building materials for it. But not only that, they also have constructed the actual furniture. In front of the Herva synagogue, in a massively protected glass case, there's a multi-million-dollar solid gold candlestick that will go in what will be the 3rd temple, or we would assume the tribulation temple. It's sitting there. It was donated by a very, very wealthy businessman in New York. It's sitting there. It's waiting for the temple to be constructed on the Temple Mount. Unfortunately, there are 2 Islamic mosques that need to be moved before you can put the temple on the Temple Mount. So it's all set, and then there's going to be a temple in the millennium. We'll have the millennial temple. Let me read this passage to you, or if you'd like, you can turn to Jeremiah 3:16. This is one of the last mentions we have. It says, "And it shall come to pass, when ye be multiplied and increased in the land in those days, saith the Lord, they shall say no more, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall that be done anymore." There is coming a day when no one will think of the ark of the covenant anymore. It will just be banished from memory. Why? Well, it says in verse 17, "And at that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart." Here's what it is. In the last temple, why won't there need to be a physical mercy seat where God manifests His presence in the temple? Well, the answer is because Jesus will be sitting on the throne and we'll be able to look at it. That's tremendous. What a promise that we have. They had the mercy seat. And they got to see the fire and the cloud and all of this. One day all of that is going to go into the things that we don't even think about anymore. Because why? Because we won't have what is pictured by the Old Testament. Rather, we'll have the actual person of Jesus Christ. But here's the truly blessed truth. I've got Jesus now, and you can too. What we sang about tonight, the fellowship, the calm retreat, the peace that we have now because of the blood of Christ, all of that is ours. Why? Well, because Jesus came and died and rose again for our salvation. The ark is neat to think about and to study, and it's a precious picture, the ark of God. But the fact is, I get to come to the mercy seat, not through a high priest. I get to come to the mercy seat as a sinner who's been washed in the blood of Christ. I can come directly into the presence of God and give Him my petitions and my praise and fellowship with other believers. That's what we do when we bow our heads in prayer, as we're sitting here in this place. When we bow our heads in prayer, collectively, we're walking into the Holy of Holies. And we're approaching the mercy seat. We have that relationship on a regular basis. Not in a box in Jerusalem. I have that at any time. I've been at the mercy seat with you today. I've been at the mercy seat alone today. I would encourage you, take advantage of the tremendous asset that we have in approaching the throne of God. Any questions that you have on what we've looked at here this evening? If you're asking where the Ark of the Covenant is, I'll say this, I don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is. If you're interested, like I said, there's lots of opinions. I don't know which one's true. Any thoughts or questions on what we've looked at here this evening? It's a neat study. Next week, read 2 Samuel 6. We're going to be back into going verse by verse through. Just wanted to spend a little bit of time and give you a history and kind of follow the arc around to where we're going to be next week in 2 Samuel 6.